7:42 in the evening. The Adelphi, in Saratoga Springs. Asher Linwood sat at the corner table in a blue flannel shirt and an old steel watch. The text from the Whitaker office had said a strategic partner. Nothing more. The door opened. Heels on the wood floor. He looked up and recognized her face from a Forbes cover Hazel had cut out and taped into her notebook the week before. Lila Whitaker, CEO of Whitaker Holdings. She sat down across from him, unwound her scarf, and met his eyes. One sentence. "There is no partner tonight, Mr. Linwood. Only me. And we need to talk about my father." Outside the window, a black Lincoln rolled to a stop, its headlights cut out. If a story about a quiet man, a careful woman, and a promise made on a deathbed sounds like the kind of thing you would stay up for, let me know in the comments where you are watching from tonight. The story does not get easier from here. It gets quieter, and then it gets harder, and then it earns the ending. 3 months earlier, August 2025. Lila stood in her father's old office on the 40th floor of Whitaker Tower. The room had been kept exactly the way Henry Whitaker had left it the morning before his stroke. Same brass pen, same gray rug, same framed photo of her at 7, on his shoulders, in the garden behind their old house in Albany. She had avoided the room for 6 years. Edith Marlowe came in without an appointment, the way she always had. She set a yellowed envelope on the desk. Inside was a handwritten will in Henry's careful hand, and a financial report stamped Treasury FinCEN, dated November of 2019, signed in initials only. A.L. "I found these last week," Edith said. "I was clearing your mother's private archive. She kept them under a false index card behind the conservation manuals. She knew Drake would search the rest of the house. She put these where only another archivist would look." Lila read the will slowly. The structure was nothing like the version Halston Drake had handed her after her father's funeral. 18% of the operating shares were to transfer to her on her 30th birthday, not her 35th. Drake had used a forged copy to delay her control by 5 years. 5 years he had held the chair as acting chief executive. 5 years he had built 3 shell companies with money he had been moving since the day Henry was buried. She did not cry. She asked, "Who is A.L.?" "I do not know," Edith said. "Your father never used the full name in front of me. I have tried." In the library across town, Asher Linwood was fitting a new brass hinge to a walnut display case. He worked with the slow attention of a man who liked to finish what he started. Edith walked past, brushed her hand against his shoulder, and said nothing. She had been doing that for 3 months, since a contact at the National Archives had confirmed that the only forensic analyst at FinCEN matching the initials and the date was one Asher Linwood, who had left federal service in June of 2020, and who was now standing in her library fixing her cabinets. She had not told him. She had quietly arranged a scholarship for Hazel through the library's staff family program, paid for through a discretionary fund she had inherited from Lila's mother. She had told no one. Asher had thanked her without asking too many questions. He had learned not to ask questions about kindness. Lila ran her own search. She found him in declassified Treasury rosters. She found his address in New York State tax filings. She drove past his house at 11 at night and saw a kitchen light and a man and a small girl folding something at the kitchen table. She did not get out. She sat in her car with the engine off for 12 minutes, watching the window, watching the man's careful hands. In late October, she hired Marcus Hale, a state forensic auditor in private practice. She asked him to take a quiet first look at the Foundation's books. He came back in 11 days. Something was wrong. Many things were wrong. He would not say more in writing. On a Tuesday, she told her assistant to send Asher a message under a corporate cover. The assistant asked why. Lila said, "If he knows it is me, he will not come. Treasury was turned away from this foundation once already. I am not going to be turned away too." She chose the plainest dress in her closet. She left her driver at home. She walked to the Adelphi, back at the Adelphi. After the sentence about her father, Asher did not move. He set the menu down very carefully, as though it might break. "He has been dead for 6 years, Miss Whitaker," he said. "Why now?" She slid the report across the table. He looked at it for a long time. The signature in the corner was his own. He did not deny it. He told her how it had begun. September of 2019. Henry Whitaker had called him directly, not through any office. The call had come at 9 on a Sunday night. Henry had believed Drake was draining the Heritage Foundation through shell entities. Asher had taken the case off the books, no fee, because Henry had been kind to him once at a Treasury hearing. And because the man on the phone had sounded tired in a way Asher recognized, he had filed the report in November. 3 weeks later, Henry was dead of a stroke in the back of a town car on the way to a board meeting. The report was sealed for lack of a complaining witness. Asher had filed to reopen it 4 times in 7 months. Each request had been killed by a phone call from somewhere above his pay grade. He had resigned in June of 2020. "Why did you not go on alone?" Lila asked. "I had a sick wife and a 4-year-old daughter. I chose them." "Your wife." March 2022. "Congenital heart. We had known a long time. We had years to get ready for it. You do not actually get ready for it." A quiet stretched between them. She said, "I was 16 when my mother died. I have never learned how to say the right thing for this. I am only sorry you were alone with it for 6 years, while I was sitting in his office and doing nothing." He looked at her. For the first time that night, he saw her as a daughter who had arrived late, not a chief executive across a table. "You do not owe me anything," he said. "My father did. I am going to finish what he started." She slid a copy of the real will toward him. He read it. He understood at once why Drake had buried it. 18% meant Lila could call an independent audit on her own authority without a board vote. It was not a fortune. It was a lever. He looked up. "Do you want my old report?" "The complete one." "I kept it." "I do, but not tonight. Tonight I would like to finish dinner like 2 people who do not owe anyone anything." He nodded once. They ate. She asked about Hazel. He told her about the paper crane Hazel had folded the night before. Lila laughed, very small. Her mother had taught her to fold them once, on the back porch of a house she no longer owned. She had forgotten how, he said, almost to himself. "I could remind you." When she stood to leave, he noticed the black Lincoln still parked across the street. He memorized the plate. At home, he ran it through a state registration tool he still had access to. Westridge Holdings LLC, the same name he had labeled Shell Entity Number 1 in the 2019 report. Drake had known about the dinner before it happened. Drake had watched it. Asher stood in his dark kitchen for 30 seconds. He listened to Hazel breathing through the open door of her bedroom. Then he opened the drawer under the sink and lifted out a small black thumb drive that had not been touched in 5 years. Friday morning. Asher came into the library as always. Edith looked at him once and knew something had moved. She did not ask. She set a brown leather notebook on his workbench. This belonged to Lila's mother. "I have kept it for years. Yesterday I decided it was time." He opened it. Notes on paper conservation. Sketches of folded cranes and irises and lotuses in a clean hand. On the last page, in a careful line, "Whoever reads this far will know how to be patient. My daughter will need patience more than gifts." He read it. He closed his eyes for half a second. He shut the notebook and put it inside his canvas bag. At Whitaker Tower, Lila called Marcus Hale. "I will have additional material this week. We need a special board meeting inside 14 days. I am activating the 18% clause." Hale told her Drake would counterattack quickly and not cleanly. She said she expected that. In the afternoon, Asher picked up Hazel from school. She held out a drawing, not a refrigerator drawing. A long red maple branch with 2 words at the bottom in her looping print. "For Dad's window." He held it a moment, then folded it carefully and tucked it inside Edith's notebook between the pages on lotus folds. That evening they sat on the wooden footbridge at Loftbury Lake with ice cream. The water was already cold, dark green at the edges. Hazel asked, "Are you happy, Dad?" He took a moment. "I am learning again." "Learning what?" "How not to be afraid." She nodded the way children nod at things they do not yet understand. Then she said, "When you stop, can I help?" He looked at her. He said, "You already do." Late that night, Asher opened the thumb drive on his kitchen laptop. He matched files against the 2019 report. The patterns were still there. Drake had not even bothered to change the structure. The same 3 shell entities, the same routing through a small bank in Hartford, the same end-of-quarter dumps timed 2 days before the Foundation's reporting cycle closed. A lazy crime, by a man who had not expected anyone to look again. Halfway through, a text came in from an unknown number. "Mr. Linwood, our office would like to discuss the welfare of your daughter. Please respond within 48 hours. Saratoga County Family Advisory Services." He recognized the name, not the county office. A private consultancy Drake had used before to apply pressure on a journalist 2 years earlier. They could not take a child. They could file an anonymous complaint that would trigger a 30-day review by the actual county office. 30 days of social workers asking Hazel questions she should not have to answer. He did not reply. He photographed the message and sent it through encrypted mail to Marcus Hale. Lila had sent him Hale's information the night before, with one line: "This man belongs to me, and as of now, he belongs to you too." At the tower, Drake received a report from his investigator. 2 words: Asher Linwood. He sat very still for almost a minute. Then he picked up the phone. Move plan C up. This week, in her apartment that night, Lila opened her own version of her mother's notebook. She folded a square of paper along the lines she still remembered. The crane came out crooked at one wing. She looked at it and smiled. It was the first time in months she had smiled while alone in a room. Monday morning. Drake asked Lila to come to his office. There was no contract on his desk. Just an offer, spoken softly across the polished wood. "I will step down from the chair within 18 months if you agree to fold part of the Heritage Foundation into Drake Wexler Holdings. A clean transaction. You keep your face. I keep mine." She understood at once. Drake knew about Asher. This was the last bribe before the knife. "I will think about it," she said. She needed days, not consent. He smiled as she rose. As she reached the door, he said, almost casually, "By the way, the library's facilities manager, Mr. Linwood. I read his guardianship file. It is more complicated than you might think. A widower with living parents-in-law in Boston can run into expanded visitation claims if those parents are encouraged in the right direction. Grief makes people open to suggestions, so does an attorney offering to work for free." It was not a threat. It was a suggestion. In the elevator, she called Asher. The first call since the Adelphi. "I need to see you. Today." "Not at Whitaker. The library closes at 6. The West Reading Room. Edith has the key." 6:30 that evening. The West Reading Room. Old oak table. A single yellow lamp. Outside the leaded glass window, the November wind was already cold. She sat down and her hands were not quite steady, not because of Drake, because she did not know how to say it without pulling Asher in deeper than she had already pulled him. He set down 2 cups of tea Edith had pressed on him at the front desk. He pushed one across the table to her. She wrapped her hands around it. Has he moved on Hazel yet? Not directly. He hinted that Rachel's parents in Boston might be encouraged to seek expanded visitation. Asher was quiet for a long time. Diane and Tom Whitlock were good people. After Rachel had died, they had once, very gently, suggested Hazel might do better closer to them in Boston. Asher had said no. They had let it go. They had never raised it again. Drake was prying at a seam that already existed and that the family had stitched closed years ago. "I will call them tonight," he said. "Before he does. They deserve to hear it from me first." She nodded. He went on. "And my report, the complete one. Hale gets it tomorrow morning. Are you ready to activate the 18%? Hale says 9 days at the earliest. The court has to certify the transfer," she added, quieter, not looking at him. "I am sorry I pulled you back in." "You did not pull me. I have been in this since 2019. I was just standing still a while." She looked up. He was not looking at her. He was looking at her mother's notebook on the table between them. He had brought it. He slid it toward her. "The last page. I think you should read it." She read the line about patience. She set the notebook down. She did not thank him. She sat in the chair long enough for him to understand that was the way she was thanking him. When she left, Edith was already at the front desk turning off the lights. The older woman did not ask. She only said, "Lock the side door behind her." Saturday morning. The library opened for its monthly children's reading hour. Hazel was there, folding cranes among the other kids on the rug. Asher stood at the back of the room with a cup of bad coffee. Lila arrived without a driver. In an old gray Subaru she only used on weekends. Gray sweater, jeans, flat shoes. She came in as a foundation patron, which was her official role here, and there was nothing strange about her being in the room. Edith met her at the door and walked her to the children's section. Hazel saw her, watched her for a moment with the careful attention of an 8-year-old, then walked over and held out a freshly folded crane. "You should have this. Dad said your name yesterday." Lila looked up at Asher at the back of the room. He had said her name to his daughter. He nodded once. She sat down on the rug next to Hazel. The other children kept folding around them. Hazel asked, "Do you know how to fold an iris?" "I used to. I forgot. Then I will show you." "Dad, come here. Help us." Asher came. He sat down on the other side of Lila. Hazel was in the middle. 4 hands on one square of paper. Asher showed Lila the first fold. His hand rested on hers when he corrected her angle. 1 second, maybe 2. She did not move it. He did not linger. Hazel did not notice. She was already on the second fold, and explaining the next one in her serious teaching voice. When they finished, 3 cranes stood in a row on the rug. Hazel's was perfect. Asher's was clean. Lila's was crooked at one wing. Hazel picked up the crooked one and held it out to her. Keep this one. The not perfect one is the one you remember most. Lila held the crane in her hand for a long time. After the reading hour, Edith kept Hazel for painting class. Asher and Lila walked out into the back garden of the library. They walked between rows of red maples whose leaves had only days left on them. She did not ask about Drake. He did not ask about Hale. This was not a meeting about plans. This was 1 hour they were allowing themselves not to plan. I forgot who my mother folded her first crane for, Lila said. You do not have to remember. You have started again. They reached the back wall of the garden where an old iron gate opened onto the staff lane. They did not go through. They stood there a moment. The wind moved the last of the leaves. She said, "When I drove past your house that night in August, I almost knocked. What stopped you?" I did not know what I would say. I still do not. He looked at her. You did not have to say anything. You just had to come. When they came back inside, Lila's phone rang. Hale. Rachel's parents had received a letter from a Boston attorney offering free consultation on grandparents' guardianship rights. Drake had started. Lila looked over at Asher. He was watching Hazel through the window of the activity room, painting a rose with a brush far too large for her hand. He did not yet know. She did not tell him then. She held the crooked crane in her coat pocket, all the way, until she was back in her car and alone in the parking lot, and only then she let herself put her forehead against the steering wheel for 1 long minute. Sunday morning. Edith asked Lila and Asher to come to her brick cottage at the edge of Saratoga Spa State Park. The tea was already poured. She set a second wooden box on the table. Not the will box. I have held something back from both of you. I cannot any longer. She opened the box. 9 letters from Henry Whitaker, all addressed to A.L. between September and November of 2019. Henry had not trusted the office mail at the end. He had sent them through Edith because the Heritage Foundation had a Treasury-cleared courier route between her archive and federal repositories. She had received the letters after his death and kept them because she had not known who A.L. was until July of this year. The last letter was dated November 14, 2019, 3 days before Henry's stroke. Edith pointed to one passage and let them read it themselves. If I do not get there in time, tell Lila that I do not wish for her to inherit the company. I wish for her to inherit the choice, including the choice not to take it. Drake will press her. She will need a man who is not afraid of Drake standing near her when she chooses. I believe you would stand there if asked. I am asking now, in case I am not asking later. Asher read it. His hand shook once. He had never seen the letter. It had sat in Edith's box for 6 years because she had not known where to send it. Lila sat very still. She did not cry. She had cried the night before, when she had learned Drake had reached for Asher's in-laws. So my father did not arrange a blind date, she said. He arranged a promise. A promise needs 2 people willing to keep it, Edith said. I could not do that part for you. That afternoon, Asher took the 1:30 Amtrak to Boston alone. Edith kept Hazel. He sat in Diane and Tom Whitlock's living room for 3 hours, the same living room where Rachel had grown up, the same couch. He told them the truth about Drake, about Lila, about the work he was finishing. He asked them for nothing. He only said, Hazel is your granddaughter. I am not fighting you for that. I am asking you not to let Drake use your love for her as a weapon against me. Diane was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, We received that letter on Friday. We were going to call you first before we answered. We will tell the lawyer we have no claim to file. Asher, I have known you 11 years. I am not going to let a stranger from a law firm tell me what I want for my granddaughter, Tom added. And if you ever need to send Hazel to us while you finish this, send her. No conditions. We will have her room ready by Tuesday. Asher nodded. He let himself sit back in the old chair and close his eyes for 30 seconds. He had not done that in any chair anywhere in 3 years. He took the late train back. On the platform in Saratoga, Lila was waiting. She had not been told the schedule. She had guessed it. She handed him a paper cup of coffee. They did not speak until they were in her car. I signed with Hale this afternoon, she said. Wednesday next week. Special meeting. 9 days became 4. I will be ready. Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. 10 in the morning. The boardroom on the 42nd floor of Whitaker Tower. The long walnut table. 12 chairs. The special meeting Lila had called the day the 18% transfer was certified by the Saratoga County Surrogates Court. Drake sat at the head of the table, face blank. He had tried to block the certification on Monday. The court had answered him in 24 hours. The 18% was now hers in writing. With her existing personal share, she held 33% of voting rights and the right to demand a presentation under the bylaws. Lila stood. I am requesting the floor for an independent audit presentation by Marcus Hale and Associates, supported by a third-party forensic specialist. I ask the board to listen before voting on anything else today. Drake objected. The agenda does not include. Hale cut in. Under Bylaw 7.4, a shareholder holding above 15% may request an extraordinary presentation at a special meeting. Ms. Whitaker holds 33% as of Monday. The chair does not have discretion to refuse. The room was quiet. Drake sat down. The door opened. Asher walked in. A dark suit, no tie. He did not introduce himself as trustee or executive. Hale did it for him. Dr. Asher Linwood, formerly senior forensic analyst at FinCEN from 2013 to 2020. I have engaged Dr. Linwood as third-party technical support for today's presentation. Asher presented for 35 minutes. He did not present like a man accusing anyone. He presented like a scientist. He showed 6 years of cash flow side by side, with the 2019 report and with the federal tax filings of 3 shell entities: Westridge Holdings, Coltrane Equity Partners, Bedford Halston LLC. Each one was registered to Drake's brother-in-law in Connecticut. The total amount misdirected after Hale's verification was $13.8 million. He did not say Drake's name. He let the numbers speak. Every board member had a printed binder in front of them. Hale had distributed them at the start. Several members were turning pages quickly. One older woman in the third chair had a hand pressed to her mouth. Drake stood. This is defamation. I will file personal suit against Mr. Linwood. Furthermore, Mr. Linwood is currently the subject of a guardianship review by Saratoga County Family Services. Hale interrupted. If I may. The anonymous complaint filed with Saratoga County last week was traced by the sheriff's office back to an IP address at a satellite office of Drake Wexler Holdings. The sheriff opened a file on Monday morning. This is the receipt. He placed it on the table. Drake was silent. For the first time, his face went truly gray. Lila stood again. She did not raise her voice. I move that the board vote on 3 items. 1. Temporarily suspend Mr. Halston Drake from the chair while the criminal investigation proceeds. 2. Transfer all material presented today to the Office of the New York State Attorney General and to FinCEN within 48 hours. 3. Appoint Hale and Associates as foundation auditor for the next 12 months. Hale called the vote. 11 in favor. 1 opposed. Drake rose slowly. He buttoned his suit jacket. He looked at Asher across the table for a long moment. Then he said, almost curious, almost soft, he chose the right man in the end. He walked out. He was not escorted. He had been chairman of this company for 15 years. He left with the dignity he had left. Afterward, Lila and Asher were alone in the empty boardroom. She did not thank him. She poured him a glass of water from the carafe on the table. He drank it. Outside the window on the 42nd floor, the first snow of the season had begun to fall in fine, slow lines. After the meeting, Lila had to stay at the tower. Media statement. Calls with the extended board. Asher left at 4. Edith had kept Hazel at the library all day, fed her dinner there, set her up with a book about owls in the reference room. 7 in the evening, Lila texted him. I am done. I can pick up Edith and Hazel on the way out to your house if that is all right, he answered. It is all right. 7:40. Route 9N between the tower and the library. Lila's old Subaru lost speed. The temperature gauge climbed into the red. She pulled to the shoulder. Cold late autumn rain. Not snow this time. She called for a tow. 90 minutes. She texted Asher. He came in 22 minutes in his old pickup. He did not say anything when he arrived. He opened the hood, checked, closed it, shook his head. Radiator has to be towed in. I am not going to fix this on the shoulder in the rain. She nodded. He let her sit in the warm pickup cab. He stood outside in the soft rain to wait for the tow. After 3 minutes, she opened the door. Get in. You are getting wet. He got in. They sat in the cab with only the dashboard light. Neither said anything for 5 minutes. The rain hit the windshield steady and even. I do not know what the next step is, she said. He understood she did not mean the car. He said, the next step is I drive you home. Tomorrow you go to work. I go to work. Hazel goes to school. A week from now you will see further than you can see tonight. She laughed once, quiet. You always talk like a man who has done this before. I lost Rachel. I learned every day that tomorrow still comes. Sometimes that is the only thing I had. She turned to him. He did not turn back. He was looking through the windshield at the rain. She said, Lila, not Asher. She was offering him her name. He turned slowly. He nodded once. Lila. They did not kiss. They did not touch. She laid her hand on the bench seat between them. After a moment, his hand rested next to hers. The edge of his little finger touched the edge of hers. Not holding, just touching. Neither of them moved for a long time. The tow arrived at 8:50. Asher handled the paperwork with the driver. He drove her to her apartment building. He did not come up. As she stepped out, she said, Sunday. The library garden. Edith makes tea. You and Hazel? We will be there. That night at her apartment, Lila received a text from Drake's lawyer. Not a threat. A notification. Drake would accept suspension and cooperate with the investigation in exchange for non-prosecution of his wife, who was the named owner of the shell entities but had not been operationally involved. Lila forwarded it to Hale with one line. Agreed. Close this part. I want to go back to running my father's company. At home, Asher sat alone in his kitchen. Hazel was asleep in Edith's apartment above the library. The crooked crane Lila had folded the Friday before was tucked inside her mother's notebook. He had kept it. He set it on the table next to the notebook and looked at it for a while before he turned out the light. Sunday, November 23rd. The garden behind Pemberton Heritage Library. Late autumn. The last of the maple leaves had gone down wet on the brick path. Edith was knitting on the old bench in a heavy coat. Hazel was running with a beagle that Edith had borrowed from a neighbor for the afternoon. Asher and Lila sat together on the second wooden bench, a few steps from Edith, 2 cups of coffee in their hands. Sweaters, scarves, no schedule. It was the first morning in a long while when neither of them had a phone in their hand. Lila told him Hale had called that morning. Drake would face 3 federal counts. His brother-in-law would face 2. The wife had been declined for prosecution. The foundation would recover roughly $11 million of the $13.8. The rest was gone for good. She was not glad, only tired. Asher nodded. They did not speak of Drake after that. Hazel ran back and sat down on the cold ground in front of them with a picture book about birds. She asked Lila, Did you fold the iris this week? I tried. It is still crooked. Then next Sunday, Dad and I will show you again. Next Sunday? Every Sunday. Will you come? Lila looked at Asher. He nodded once, very small. She said to Hazel, I will come. Hazel looked at her with the very serious eyes of an 8-year-old who has been promised something. Then she went back to her book. By mid-morning, Hazel had worn herself out chasing the dog. Asher carried her to the pickup, started the heater, and she fell asleep on the front bench seat with his coat draped over her. He walked back to the garden. Lila was standing at the edge of the small pond inside the wall. He went and stood next to her. The last red leaves dropped onto the water one at a time and floated. Today is the first day since I woke up 2 months ago that I have not thought about Drake first, she said. That is how it goes. Not by forgetting. By other Sundays. She turned to him. He was already facing her. No coffee cup this time. No Hazel between them. Edith had gone inside, not by accident. He set his hand against her cheek. She did not flinch. She closed her eyes for half a second. He said very quietly, I am not in a hurry. You are not in a hurry, but I want you to know. She nodded. He kissed her. Once, soft. He did not draw it out. When he stepped back, she did not open her eyes right away. She held her forehead against his for 2 more seconds. Then she said, My father would have liked you. He did. I just got here late to find out. They walked toward the pickup. Hazel was still asleep. In the warm cab, her small face rested against his coat. Lila looked at the child through the glass. I do not know how to do this. No one does. You do it one Sunday at a time. 6 months later. May, 2026. Saratoga Springs in early summer. Loftberry Lake, clear and green. The new maples were leafing. Pemberton Heritage Library opened its new East Wing, the Rachel Linwood Children's Reading Wing. Lila had proposed the name 4 months earlier. Asher had agreed after he had asked Hazel. Hazel had only said, "Mom would have liked that." On the stage, Lila spoke briefly. She did not speak like a chief executive. She spoke like a person. She mentioned her father, her mother, Edith. She thanked a man who had fixed more than cabinet hinges. Asher stood at the back of the hall, holding Hazel's hand. He nodded once. Hazel was 9 now. When Lila called her to the stage, she ran up holding a paper crane folded from an old Saratoga road map. She handed it to Lila and spoke into the microphone in her own voice, clear and unrehearsed. "My Lila, please do not go anywhere." She had said my Lila, not Mom, not Miss Whitaker, a name only Hazel used. The hall went warm and quiet. Lila knelt and put her arms around the girl. "Your Lila is staying." Edith was in the front row, wiping her glasses with the corner of a scarf. In the late afternoon, after the guests had gone, Asher and Lila walked toward the small rented house at Loftberry Lake. Edith had Hazel for 2 more hours at the library. They sat on the front step of the small house. Asher took a key out of his pocket. "I bought this place last month. The owner moved out to Vermont. I am not renting anymore." She looked at the key. He went on. "I am not asking you to move in today. I am not asking you next month. I only want you to know. There is room here for 3. When you are ready, it could be this fall. It could be the fall after. I can wait." She took the key. She did not give it back. She put it in the pocket of her coat. "I will keep it. It might be before fall." He smiled. It was the 3rd real smile of the whole year. She smiled too. "Do you remember the Adelphi?" She said, "Once a week. I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I went in. I sat in the restaurant for 40 minutes after you left, thinking I would not write you back. So we almost missed it, but we did not." They walked down toward the edge of the lake. His hand found hers. This time he held it. Down the path Edith appeared, walking Hazel by the hand. The girl waved both arms. "Dad, my Lila, come over here. There are ducks." Asher and Lila walked toward her, hands still joined. Edith stopped a few steps back to let them reach Hazel first. Hazel took one of Asher's hands and one of Lila's and pulled them both to the edge of the lake where the ducks were paddling in a slow line, a mother and 4 small ones behind her. She had arranged a blind date for him, not because her father told her to, because her father had trusted a man 6 years before, and his daughter needed 6 years to understand why. That night, 2 strangers sitting across from each other at the Adelphi did not know they had been promised to each other by a father on his deathbed. Some appointments take half a decade. Some lake houses only need 3 keys. Some children name the newcomer themselves, and that is how a family begins.